The following is a conversation with my good friend Dan, the CEO of Twing Data. We talk about AI agents, current AI development tools like Cursor, Claude Code, and the business of AI. Hopefully you enjoyed this conversation. If you want more content like this, drop me a message in the comments. I found that it's changed the way that I program. It's writing, 90% of my code.
Codex hallucinated a timestamp like 3 months into the future. I didn't realize it. I merged it in. I made another change to the table that was basically like 1 month before the migration that Codex made, and it ended up in a weird state. Because it's like, when it tries to implement the changes sequentially in like a shadow database, it like did it out of order, and I'm like, what the hell happened here? Like, I don't understand. And I'm like, God, crap. It's like this one shortcut that saved me, like 5 minutes of time. I spent an hour fixing because I had to like modify database records and like hash, like the signature hashes to deal with like migration issues.
I'm here with Dan Golden, CEO of Twing Data. You want to introduce yourself?
Sure.
Dan?
I am Dan, CEO of Twing Data. Brian and I used to work at Triple together, built a lot of cool stuff. Now we're on our own, building even more cooler stuff.
That's right. And for those of you who don't know, I'm Brian. I'm the CEO of Cosmos. And thanks for joining. Dan and I are going to be talking about AI agents, AI workflows, different AI stacks. So
everyone's favorite topic of the day.
So why don't we start with probably the most common, the hottest term right now? That's AI agents.
Yeah.
How would you define an AI agent?
Oh man, starting off hot. I guess the way I think about maybe at extreme form is an agent is a person. So you have some person doing a role. Lo and behold, you could have a system, like autonomous system doing the work. I think in practice these days, I think of it much more narrower. I'm a software engineer by training. So if you think about, at least in software engineering land, what is an agent? It's like Claude Code, Cursor agent. This idea where you give it a task, it then figures out how to execute that task with the tools it has at its disposal. I would say like low level, the way it's implemented, at least my understanding, right? It's like you have like some smart AI model that basically says, hey, I need to, figure out the price of beans. And you give that goal, and it has to figure out the price of beans. And internally, it says, well, what do I need to do to take this, very abstract, high-level task and break down to a series of steps? It's like, well, first, I need to figure out what a bean is. Oh, is it a vegetable? Is it a fruit? I actually don't know what it is. Do you know?
No, I don't know.
No one knows what it is. But and then
that's why you need an agent.
But and that's why you need an agent. So it's like it's first you say, oh, I don't know what a bean is. I need to go to the dictionary to figure out what it is. Oh, do I have access to a dictionary? I do. Let me define bean. Then it will say, oh, I need to search. Oh, where do I search? Oh, I have access to Google. Right. So it's the idea where an agent on its own, or like if you use like ChatGPT on its own, you're at the end of the day at the mercy of the data that the model was trained on. And then it's like, I don't know, gazillions of bits of data, but it's all concentrated in that one moment of time. I think the idea of an agent is it will sort of breaks out of its environment to interact with the outside world, which gives it more and more of these capabilities. Maybe that's the way I think about it.
So maybe like let's zoom out a little bit and even think about how would you compare like a large language model and an agent? Like, how do you define those two things relative to each other?
So I view an agent, maybe you think of it like a diagram. You have an agent encapsulates an LLM, right, as a foundational layer. And then on top of it, you have this LLM or the agent using the LLM to interact sort of with these tools that are connected to the outside world, right? Once again, like the analogy of like Claude Code. I mean, we'll talk about it, I'm sure, in a bit. But you say, I want to add this feature to my application. It has access to your code base, but it could also run local, shell commands. Like it's let me, grep the files for this bit of code. Let me run the unit test. Let me run the formatting. Let me spin up a database. Let me drop a database. Let me delete your hard drive. Like these are all the things that sort of these agents could do. But in order to know what to do, they interact with the LLM for I would say the context and the instructions, and then they execute that through these integrations with the rest. I guess maybe you think of the LLM as the brain. These tools are the tentacles. Like you think about an octopus.
Yeah, that's what I think about it. It's like the LLM is the brain, and then the tools, with the things that make it agentic, is like what's in its tool belt.
Yeah.
So a very simple, I think probably one of the first iterations of it is let's surf the web.
Yeah.
The first ChatGPT 3.5 wasn't connected to the internet. So it's like if you asked it, it would say my training date cuts off,
Yeah.
certain date, but then you give it the tool of being able to search the internet the same way that I would search Google.
Yeah.
And then what some
And that's
of
kind of what deep research is.
right. And so what some of these probably like the hottest or like some of the fastest growing tools that are out there in the space are taking the concept and applying it to software development,
Yeah.
where now your LLM, your brain, can use the tools that you and I would use as software engineers to search our code, to run our code, delete files, and so now like you can start to think where the brain has access to all these tools and it has the abilities to reason,
Yeah.
which one is right for the task based off of your prompt. So it's like now you're adding this layer where the agency
Yeah.
comes in, and I found the way that it's changed the way that I program. It's it's writing 90% of my code.
Do you find that you have a good intuition for what tasks the agent will do well on, where it will fail? Is it a function of like your obviously it's a function of your prompt and your experience, but like
Yeah.
I guess you've grown symbiotically with it.
Yeah, so I think there's definitely a relationship between how tired I am and how good my prompts are, right? Like when I tell it for the 8th time that it's still broken, that's when I know like it's either the context window is too large, or I'm asking it to do something that's outside of its scope. And I do have to check myself to say like, all right, this is something I should just do manually. For example, one thing that it struggles with, I've noticed, is just deleting like blocks of code that it doesn't need, and then in some cases it's just faster for me to go in and do it. So you're not completely outsourcing all of your critical thinking to the LLMs,
More and more.
but not yet. But so you do have to, I think, get a feel for like where like the edge of its capabilities.
Yes.
And then the more, I'd say like more modern stuff, right? Like things that I would expect it to maybe not be in the training data or not be as like SEO friendly, or I guess GEO now, it's generative engine optimization, how LLMs discover content. If I don't feel confident that it's going to be out there, then my confidence in the LLM goes down and the agent, because it's like you're probably not going to be able to figure this out.
Yeah, it's interesting because like I guess you could speak to it better, but my intuition from using these tools is that it's going to be better for some languages than others that are generally in the training set. Like you're doing a lot of Rust now, right? For like what you're building, and like I'm curious how it works for Rust, because I'm using it basically like for TypeScript and Python, and does like a really nice job. Like I suppose like TypeScript because it's typed, which gives it an extra layer of protection, right? It's like, oh, the code doesn't, I don't know, compile, or I guess like, it could like not compile, it could like fail a type check. Like it fails linting. Like it's kind of nice to give these models, these agents, I guess, that feedback loop. So I'm curious if you're seeing something similar, like quality around maybe different like languages, different frameworks, so forth.
I definitely noticed that on the Rust side of things, like it's very confident that it's got like all my changes and that it won't compile. And so there are a lot of I think like areas I think around like Rust where I feel like I'm just basic like type safety and like getting the code to compile is not as smooth as some of the like just React or like TypeScript projects that I'm working on. But I went into it feeling like that would be the case. Like this is the first time I've ever worked with Rust, and it's writing most of my Rust code. But I also, going into it, know that it's a balance between like, let me also learn some of the principles along the way, and I can use the LLM to speed that along. Like I don't have to go digging through the Rust documentation because it's going to be able to synthesize it for me.
That's cool.
So when you think about agents, it's like you've got Cursor for, at least in software development, you've got Cursor, you've got Claude has a new CLI tool, Google Gemini has a CLI tool, OpenAI bought Windsurf for $3 billion.
There's the Codex, another Codex,
which
is their like.
That's the Anthropic one?
No, it's the OpenAI one.
Oh, they have a separate.
They have both a CLI and they have the one that's like automatically opening PRs now.
I see. Have you used Codex?
I use the one that opens PRs.
Okay.
Automatically, which is you basically connect to GitHub, right? And you're like, hey, do this
Yeah.
issue, do this issue, do this issue.
Okay. And does it plug into things like Linear or other
Not as far as I
project
know.
management?
Not as
Okay.
far as I know. Just and it's one directional. That was the other shit I ran into it. Like,
Okay.
if, for example, like you give it a PR or give it an issue, it generates code. You can hit a button to open the pull request.
Okay.
But if you leave a comment on the PR, it doesn't go back to
Oh, okay,
OpenAI.
okay. Does you mentioned CodeRabbit earlier? Does that do that?
No, CodeRabbit's just straight up like code review, right?
Okay.
Like, but it does a really phenomenal job. Like, I like it.
Okay. And so it's just looking at the like self-contained PR
Yeah,
and
exactly.
giving
The
feedback.
I mean, but it's like a pretty thoughtful, like I was chatting with someone, at a NATEC company about it, and like it went through the OpenRTB documentation to be like, hey, like
Oh,
this
wow.
thing in OpenRTB 2.5 has this other, I don't know, feature that you're not considering. It's like pretty thoughtful around that.
So CodeRabbit itself is is an agent.
Yeah, I'm sure it's like I imagine behind the scenes they probably the way they thought about it was like we're gonna have an agent on based on the code base, the language is the front end, is the back end, is it Java, is it PHP, it has a set of rules or a set of agents.
Okay.
So it's like this agent will look at I don't know like poorly named variables. This agent will look at business context. This agent will look at bad code complexity. Like I'm sure that's kind of how they've broken it down. And then they run them in parallel, synthesize the results,
Yeah.
like drop it in as your commentary.
What do you think? What do you think is like the right scope of tasks to give to an agent? I've seen some stuff on X, on LinkedIn, where you have these kind of like master agents that are orchestrating all of these different workflows. And I think what's sometimes hard for me to wrap my head around is what tasks are appropriate to give to an agent. Is agents or like agentic behavior just a different way to describe workflows and automation? Is it a marketing term? Like, where do you think?
All of the above. I don't know. Like, I think if the task, maybe in my mental model, right? It's like if you think about what is an agent behind the scenes, right? It's like trained on some open source data, through the LLM, and based on that, it's in essence like writing code with, obviously some input of the code base, that you're feeding it, or the prompt you're giving it with the context you're giving it. It tends to do well for the code that has absolutely like zero business context that it doesn't need. Like the best example for me is like Terraform, infrastructure as code, because it's like whether you're a bank or like a tech startup or I don't know doing video editing apps, and you need to I don't know spin up a network with a database like that's written millions of times on GitHub. Lo and behold, the AI models know that Terraform could be run that way. If you're doing some gnarly distributed system, around I don't know financial transactions, like I doubt the agent's going to be as effective because it's one it doesn't have the business context, and then two, it's like the more the code base volume grows, the harder I think it gets for it to just reason and understand these relationships.
Yeah.
Like I listened to a podcast or like a video by what's his name, like Armin. Like he used to be at Sentry for a while. Like it's
Okay.
we could like link to it in the show notes.
Yeah.
But
the
it's
link
really good.
here.
Yeah, up there. We're gonna overlay it. But he does like a pretty good job where he has a lot of like I would say like sometimes people talk in abstraction like do this, do that. He has like much more like hands-on like concrete things. So for example, like one thing he says is you want to centralize all your logging. So whether you do logging in the console in the UI or in the backend, put it all into a single file. He built a tool that says give me the most recent 20 lines.
Okay.
And then that feeds into the agent. So then the agent can be like, I made a change in the backend, I made this change on the UI. It sort of combined logs and then has a lot more info to work with.
Okay.
So I would say like there's a lot of these like, I guess discoveries, right, and best practices that people are figuring out, like to take advantage of these agents. It tends to do well. I mean, going back to your question, it tends to do well in like, in my mind, like the things on the boundary. Okay, I have a UI, change a button here, add a new page, model style after this other page. Like it's great, like on the periphery.
Yeah.
If you're just like, or maybe on the other end, it's probably going to be great at the other end. It's like, I want to collect new data.
Yeah.
But wiring it all together is probably where it's going to struggle more. But if your code base is simple enough, it's honestly not too bad.
Yeah. I think it's like I start to draw the distinction when the very provocative thing is like software engineering is dead, right?
Yeah.
Or like AI is going to replace all the software engineers, and I don't think it really maps like quite as nicely as like I have my front engineer AI agent and then my back end engineer. I think it's more like what you said, where I've got an agent that is responsible for monitoring my deploys. It's like when you do a deploy, it's reading all the logs, it's like looking at your charts, and then it's potentially spotting like a regression. But its scope is very narrow, and that's how you can manage, I think, understanding like where it's getting tripped up, because you're not asking it to do too much. You're maybe handing it like two or three different tools, and then you are still orchestrating this and taking the feedback from your like deploy bot, deploy agent, and then you've got maybe like one that's monitoring your database transactions, and then you can kind of like reconcile those things. But it would be too much to try to stuff all of that into a single agent's workflow, because I think they're going to start to get confused. You're going to start running against context window limits.
But that's that clever thing I think we were both chatting a bit about, right? It's like Gemini came out with their own CLI, and people are like, Gemini itself sucks as a CLI, but it's great to have Claude CLI call it because like Gemini has much more context.
Yeah.
And I think the prompt, right, basically is like you have this additional tool now called Gemini. You run it with a -p command, so you don't need to run it interactively. And then if you think you have a task that requires you analyzing a massive amount of code, use that instead of your own native abilities. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, there's a lot of this like stringing together, like these tools.
The Frankenstein, like have one AI talk to another one and use the things that they're really good at. I think is really interesting because I think it's showing one how quickly these things are developing, that it's seemingly like overnight. Yeah. There are just like these new groundbreaking tools that you can use, like basically for free. But that it's also like, it seems like nobody has a moat. None of these companies have a moat. Like I use Cursor, and then when I started using the Claude CLI and now like the Gemini CLI, my usage is like, I'm pretty quick to shift from one tool to another.
What are you paying for?
Right now I'm paying for Claude, like just the chat through Anthropic, and then I'm paying for Cursor. But now that I can use my subscription for Claude CLI, my Cursor, I don't know if I'll continue using Cursor.
Interesting.
But I don't, in 3 months from now, who knows? Yeah.
I found it similar to you that I've shifted more and more to the Claude CLI.
Yeah.
But I still don't have a good mechanism for looking at diffs.
In the CLI?
Yeah. And I typically don't. Like in that case, I'll either like open the PR and like do it that way, or I'll open it in Cursor, because it'll tell you that these are diffs relative to the main branch or whatever like base branch you have, and then like manually step through them. Yeah. But I don't know if there's a better mechanism at some level. Like if you're leaning into CLI, maybe just like I don't know, trust it.
Yeah, I because how much code I'm reading, it's like a lot. I'm accepting a lot of the code that without it's kind of like glancing through it. It started to make me think like, at what point do we just abstract the actual editor away, and you're either confirming visually or it's just like push straight to GitHub, like where you're looking at the div, and like the actual code itself becomes less important.
But that's the danger. Like I think that's sort of the context of like if it's a UI change that for to your point, like you could test, great. Mm-hmm. If it's like some backend thing, you will it's like, especially like security, everyone's like, hey, security goes down the toilet,
right?
And probably true to a degree, so you got to know what the hell it's doing. Which is why something like CodeRabbit makes sense, because it does act as yet another filter. I'll give you a fun example. I mentioned like I used ChatGPT's Codex to open PRs, and so we use like for our application we use Prisma to handle like our database migrations, and with the database migration the file has a timestamp which indicates like when sequentially to run the database migration. So Codex hallucinated a timestamp like 3 months into the future. I didn't realize it. I merged it in. I made another change to the table that was basically like 1 month before the migration that Codex made, and ended up in a weird state, because it's like when it tries to implement the changes sequentially in like a shadow database, it like did it out of order, and I'm like, what the hell happened here? Like I don't understand. And I'm like, God, crap. It's like this one shortcut that saved me like 5 minutes of time. I spent an hour fixing because I had to like modify database records and like hash like the signature hashes to deal with like migration issues. Every once in a while you do get bit.
It does happen, where it's you think that just like accepting, but it happened to me today. I was trying to polish some UI changes last minute, and then all I wanted to do was like some spacing, make some like fonts responsive, and then I got a little carried away, and then I broke like 2 other components just like messing around with some styling that I was vibe coding.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because like I'm writing a lot more tests now than I ever have. So
Actually, yeah, I gotta get my testing agent
yeah.
up and running because I'm writing no tests. But it feels like they're easier to write than ever.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
How do you when you prompt the test writing? What one of those prompts look like?
It tends to be pretty narrow. It's like, hey, I want to roll this new functionality. It's in this case because you write the unit tests.
Okay.
Make sure they're isolated, to like in true unit test fashion. Like don't connect to a database. Only test the logic. Keep it minimal. Like I think that's probably the most frequent prompt you give. Keep it simple. Keep it minimal because otherwise they'd have to go rogue. I did like one behavior change for me is like it would like write all these readmes and comments and all this, and I used to get rid of it. I'm like I don't need this. Now I actually keep them because like it's. Like I think there's some truth to it that hey, the future versions of the AI will use that those comments and context to do a better job, for as part of its context.
Yeah.
I'm like whatever, it doesn't hurt me that much.
Yeah. I started doing that with I don't know if this is still the case, but in Cursor when it prompts you to do a new chat because it's running out of the context window, I would close those conversations with like a README summary that then I would roll over into the new one because I didn't trust Cursor's automated summary.
Yeah.
And so, but then I end up keeping them. And so now, I have, like major refactors. I had like my main entry point into my Rust app was like 3,000 lines long. And it started I couldn't include it in any prompts.
You got to use Gemini.
Yeah, I got to switch to Gemini because it was too much. And so then simple features, it just wasn't as efficient. So I would run out of chats faster. So then I wrote up this whole plan, like a migration plan that, is basically a tech spec on how we're going to break this up, all the modules. And then one by one, I would like start new chats, refer to the original document, and then like start breaking it out.
A lot of people are writing, saying like how important prompting is. Mm-hmm. And I think in generally that's true for, having conversations with ChatGPT and like just, garbage in, garbage out. But I find with code, like, I don't think I run the most sophisticated prompts. And I still think it does, like, a pretty decent job. Mm-hmm. So I guess maybe a question for me, is like, for me, it's like, what is the upside in a much better prompt? Because, like, it's like a common flow, right? It's like, you can take the code base and, paste it into, I don't know, ChatGPT, give it a problem, be like, analyze this code, help me come up with another prompt that I could then feed into an agent. Yeah. And, like, I don't know, I feel it's better. I don't think it's that much better than me being like, implement this issue, use this library, think about this, and maybe like half a dozen bullet points.
I think where I've seen the prompt make a difference, because I agree for the most part that it is usually good enough to get it right on like the first try or
a few iterations.
It doesn't. Yeah, I don't find that I necessarily have to spend too much time on the prompt, except for two cases. On the front end, like I try to be as descriptive as possible and really like describe the what visually kind of like what I want the page to really communicate. So it's like, I want this to be elegant. I want it to be modern, minimalist, like sharp colors, high contrast. So I try to like prioritize. I spend the time on the prompt. And then when there are bugs that I've gone through a few iterations and it's not getting, I found this on, I don't know if you said this to me or I found this maybe on LinkedIn where the prompt was, come up with 5 to 7 possible root causes for this issue and then pick the likely 1 or 2, and before you implement a fix, write validate that this is actual problem with logs. Because I've definitely gotten into these loops where, especially with Claude, it's a little trigger happy, and so like I ask it to do one thing and next thing you know it's like creating new files and deleting stuff. And so intentionally making it think about the potential root causes and then picking the most likely one and looking for the validation, I feel like has improved those results.
There's a lot of so it's just like it's odd, but it's like slow down, think.
Yeah.
Somehow it actually works.
Take your time. I had this other idea the other day that I haven't put into practice, but I'm curious what you think about it. Do you think that test-driven development is like potentially like a more effective pattern to like use models to program so that one, you're writing your test first, but then you have a clear picture of like what the logic is supposed to be without it kind of like
I-
going rogue on you.
It's interesting. I think that's probably true. Although I think you buy basically like one shot both at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Like part of the reason tests in general are good, I think, for like the agent flow is like that feedback loop. Like how the hell do you know it's working?
Yeah.
And like if you at least have some tests or the compile time checks, you could at least verify that nothing's like completely broken.
Yeah.
And at some level, like that's kind of what test-driven development is. But I guess my point is like you could probably just put that in the initial prompt, be like, I want to code this feature.
Mm-hmm.
This is how to indicate it'll work. It needs to be A, B, C, D, E. Also add unit tests to test that.
Yeah.
Like that's probably how I would approach it, rather than like test first and then be like, hey, use these tests to write the functional code.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. Like I think that's just like more of a style preference.
Yeah.
Like very similar to I think your comment around UI. Like I guess part is like because it's so visible, it's like very easy to react. Like I like this, I don't like this.
Yeah.
But my approach is I'm also like I would say like particular about style because I also say like keep it minimal. Like
Yeah.
don't use the default like I don't know Rainbow S like
Yeah.
theme. But what I typically do is I still have it do this like this great like whatever default is like this purple blue gradient
Mm-hmm.
and. But I like seeing it out there first, and then I go in. Now make it minimal. Now do this. Now do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Versus like I don't overthink the first prompt.
Mm-hmm.
At least stylistically, I like my first prompt's like function. The
Yeah,
second
yeah.
prompt is like more about style.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So you split it up.
So I don't know. It's like I think part of it is like I guess maybe the example is like we're all I don't know artists, and we all start with the same block of wood.
Yeah.
And like we all have different way of sculpting. Like maybe you focus on the feet. I focus on I don't know the general shape.
Sure.
And then you should go ahead to details.
Do you feel like do you feel more creative like with like the tech stack that you use now to build stuff?
I think so. I think there's like just so like such little friction. Like I remember
Yeah.
my first I would say like full time coding. I used Java.
Yeah.
And then I tried Python. I'm like, holy shit, this is so much better
Yeah,
than Java
yeah.
because of like the friction of starting. And
Mhm.
the same exact thing with I think the agents.
Yeah.
Right? It's just very easy to just build something, throw it away if you don't like it.
Yeah, yeah. I've definitely, like hundreds of lines of just stuff where I just like end up scrapping,
Yeah.
but
You
it
don't feel
does-
bad about it because it's like
Yeah, yeah, because I didn't pour 6 hours into it and I'm like in love with this code, right? I just feel like, yeah, we got here in 2 or 3 prompts and I can trash it and start over. And it gives you, I feel like, more room to experiment where, especially with us, we're so early stage that it feels like I'm not committing necessarily to like a feature set or even, like general functionality without like, being able to double back and see like, maybe there's this other opportunity, right? That I could pivot into this
Yeah.
or, I guess it's like double edged, right? Because you can also, it's very easy to get carried away and distracted on like what you're building. There's a lot of possibilities.
I do think though, like to your point around like it's funny because we're talking about it and everyone's just like they write shit code, they don't care. I think
Yeah.
there's I don't know, like I would like I'm sure for sure part of it is true. Like I do care I think less about most of the code I write as long as it's solving the business problem. But then two, I mean maybe and I'm not trying to, pat ourselves in the back of, senior engineers, blah 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 blah. But it's like I think over time you understand what parts matter, what parts don't.
Yeah.
And when it's getting closer to the code that matters, then you give it more of that human touch.
Yeah.
Like maybe like because Brian and I used to work at like a real time bidding exchange, and like one of the flows was like, it's like support something at the core exchange, then support things on an API, and then support things in the UI. And same idea, but like inverted. It's like the core code like that needs to be rock solid.
Yeah.
Like the API needs to be better, but the UI could be okay janky every once in a while, especially if your users are like internal or whatever, and you're just like testing. And then similarly, you could like experiment on the edges. And when things prove themselves, then you give them more official support by incorporating them into the core.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I guess you should be spending more time, not about, I don't know, some fringe button.
Yeah, yeah. Like for the most part, it's easier to get to good enough,
Yeah.
and then move on to the core business problem. Which is like, I think for the tools that we have right now, like getting to that kernel of like can I invest more in this, and then giving it that human touch and I think also feeling confident, right? I think confidence is a big part of just, is this going to work? I didn't write these, all of this code and how I'm not as much of a purist. We were talking about this the other day, where if AI's written a lot of it, you're able to think, it's kind of abstracted away. So you're able to think higher level, but then, you've also at a certain point, you've got to zoom in and make sure that, if you're building something that is SOC 2 compliant, for
Yeah,
example, you're working in finance and healthcare where the stakes are higher, there's going to be, you need more guardrails around what you're shipping.
Do you think that's, I guess, where the ecosystem will grow? Like more of these guardrails, other agents or other code reviewer? Like, how do you think that problem gets solved?
I think there's, like I've seen some, like different startups that are like raising money and stuff around like agent compliance, for example. And like, yeah, how do agents work in a healthcare setting? How does role-based permission access work in an agentic world where they have access to all this different data and like, treating the agents with different, I guess, like priority levels around what they're supposed to be doing, especially if they're interfacing with customers like chatbots.
Yeah.
So it feels like, yeah, we're at the tip of the iceberg in terms of like the tooling for some of that. And, and I think this is where you start to think of when is an agent appropriate and like when is it not? Like if you were doing your taxes, for example, if you were building an AI tax company that's going to compete with Intuit, the logic that actually calculates, like your adjusted gross income and all of those are pretty clearly defined rules. That it's just like pretty straightforward conditional logic that it wouldn't necessarily make sense to throw an agent at it, right? And especially because in this setting, the stakes are pretty high. If you get my taxes wrong and I'm liable, that's a big deal.
I mean, that's the IRS is just an eval loop.
Right.
You just take the output, feed it back to your agent. I think.
Yeah.
I think that's fine. Next year it'll be much better.
Yeah.
Much improved.
The Doge just makes the IRS agents. Let's talk about the business of AI. So, where do you want to start?
I feel like we should have started AI companies. We should have started no-code tools.
You think that's where the I guess like the biggest opportunities are like.
I'm saying at least what I'm seeing in the market with like some of that revenue growth. Like are they profitable? Like
Bolt. What are the other ones?
I mean, Cursor, Replit recently, right?
But I think and it kind of like spooked me, right? Claude CLI and I think the amount of I think you and I are both pretty deep in the weeds in the cutting edge world of this stuff, right? On YouTube, on LinkedIn, Hacker News, Reddit, and I think just how quickly the momentum shifts from one to the other. I find like it's pretty like it's happening so fast.
I mean, one view is that Nvidia or whatever, like hardware is the only thing that's making money, and every layer is actually giving you the same performance at like a discount, subsidized by VC. Like, do you remember like when Uber, Lyft launched?
Yes.
It was like the prices were like below market because it was all heavily subsidized.
Yeah.
Like, there's probably some truth to it, where it's like the further away from Nvidia you are, the cheaper you're like, I don't know, per compute, like. Per instruction, like cost is
right. So I think that's a good point. I was thinking about this the other day, where 10 years ago or maybe like 15 years ago, we were all taking $2-3 Uber rides across all these cities until to the point where it's the only thing that I use. But now the rides are like $30 and $40 because these people got to eat until Waymo comes and replaces all of them. But the AI part of it, like on Cursor, I'm on the $20 a month plan. I'm getting much more value than $20 a month.
Well, I guess it's like, are you getting more like, sure, we're all getting more value, but do you think their costs are more than $20?
Cursor? Yeah, definitely. Like they have to be losing money on it.
Do you think there's some people that just don't use it as much as you do, and they make money on that tail, that head? And there's always going to be, whale users. Because you do run into Cursor limits every once in a while. Like, they will tell you, like, whatever you've hit your limit.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I want to know. No one's, like, shares any of these numbers.
Right.
So we're all, like, guessing.
I guess the only thing you can infer is like, Cursor's a very small team. At least, from what they publicly disclose. It's like 25 people or like 30 people. I don't know how quickly they're hiring or growing, but their costs are paying for models, paying engineers, and I guess like and whatever they're paying for sales, B2B sales. Because I have heard at least a couple of people reach out to me, totally like unsolicited friends of mine who work at tech companies, to ask me what I think about Cursor, because they're paying for like the enterprise version.
Interesting.
Have you looked at Cursor's usage analytics lately? Their page?
No.
So maybe about 2-3 weeks ago they released a whole new like analytics page.
Like for your own account?
Yeah, before they used to just count requests, but now they have a much more detailed dashboard, and it shows you how many tabs you accept, how many lines the agent writes, and it made me think about how think about an engineering manager, a VP of engineering, a CTO who is managing a team of people, how that's going to change the way that you're evaluated. Where let's say we're on the same team, you're using Cursor, I'm not. This month you shipped, I don't know, 100,000 lines of code, and I shipped 20. And how somebody's going, because you're going to have those stats available, how that's going to.
I mean, everyone's like lines of code aren't everything, but I'm sure they're correlated, especially to that degree. I don't know, like I do. So, yeah, I mean, to your point, I guess there's the question, right? It's like if your team is using more, I don't know, Cursor money, is that good or bad? And it's like, hey, you guys are spending more money. The other one's like, hey, you guys use more because we're getting more value than you're spending.
Right, because you can pay per with like it's usage based on Cursor too, right? Instead of
they have both, right? Yeah. They have like, I mean, they all have like both like baseline plus like charge the extra.
Yeah, and you're on the Anthropic plan. Which one are you on?
The same one, the $20 a month.
The 20.
I pay for Cursor the 20. I pay for Claude the Anthropic 20. But like CLI gets included now, which is nice. Mm-hmm. And there's maybe like one day I hit my limit because I'm not coding 10 hours a day. And then I also pay for ChatGPT, like the $20 a month plan. Although every once in a while I'll upgrade to the 200 if they're not something new, and I'm like, I want to try that, and then every month I downgrade.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you, because a few months ago you were one of the first people that sent me a research report. From OpenAI, and you were paying for the 200 one, so you downgraded from that.
Yeah,
and then you like
it's just a lot.
Yeah,
it's like, am I getting that much value out of it? Probably, but do I need it? Probably not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think the examples are like going back to the example of like 10,000 lines or 100,000 lines versus 20. I do find that sometimes I'll do work using agents that I just like it's valuable, but I would just not do it at all in the prior universe.
What's an example?
Like some minor issue on the backlog. It's like, I don't know, 10 p.m.
Yeah,
like, I feel like I should do something.
Okay. Yeah.
Write a prompt to do this. Like, I don't know, add an admin page that I don't need at all, but I'll add because it's like some random ticket that's floating around.
Yeah.
So I think where bar for, I guess, doing just gets lowered in a way.
Yeah.
Even if you're like, was it valuable to the business more, minimally?
Yeah. I recently did that with dark mode. It's not.
Oh no, that's where dreams go to die.
It's not something I would have prioritized otherwise, but a user explicitly asked me for it, and then I thought about how difficult would it actually be? If I could just hand this off to like my editor, my agent, to do it, and. Yeah, for the most part, like it was a pretty smooth transition, but I definitely wouldn't. It's not something I would have done. But spend time doing.
Like what I do think about like that is like, did I just introduce more code that I have to manage? That's going to make some other features worse now because I wasn't as intentional about what I built.
Yeah.
The answer is like, it still feels good to like do something.
Mm-hmm.
But like I don't know, like.
Yeah, but it's easy. It's hard to know when to stop. I think sometimes where like I've delayed writing tests for so long. Because just like there wasn't enough usage to warrant tests, and now that there is, I also just like always prioritize continuing to add features and then taking.
Well, do you think maybe like a solution to that is because like when we were at Triple F, you remember we always talked about testing. Yeah, it's like, hey, in the world of real time bidding, like there's infinitely many combinations, impossible to test everything.
Sure.
And you have the diehards that are just like unit test everything.
Yeah.
And others are like, screw it.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like I fall into like as with most things, like in the middle ground. But do you think there's more on like instrumenting the code live and sending stats back, collecting errors, and then somehow feeding those into like I don't know, like some way of prioritizing and I don't know, debugging that way? Because you run desktop app, right? Like so, I'm sure one, people have to opt in, but then two, you have to like the world. I'm sure you'll see a ton of environments, Intel versus I don't know. Like,
that stuff. I have built a lot of tooling into the app to make it really easy for users to send me all the relevant information. For example, today we had a user who was missing one of the really critical binaries in the app. I'm not sure how it happened, but we were talking.
Was it FFmpeg?
It was FFmpeg.
Oh, I'm also missing FFmpeg.
You're missing it? Yeah. All right. Common issue. P1.
It only indexes images.
Yeah. So because it's not exploding the video. So there's something going on with that, and we were talking about today how we should auto detect that when you start the app and trigger either like prompting the user to share their current state.
Yeah.
So that you always do like a series of checks when you open it, but then
Kind of like a health check.
right, a health check, and then you package everything up, like your logs and stuff, with the user's permission, so that we can get visibility into it. But that's a lot of tooling that we built.
But I wonder if like you could like feed that into the AI loop, which is like
Yeah.
hey, instead of us, because the old way of doing it is like we're gonna build this across like 10 different environments. We're gonna run through a series of tests.
Yeah.
Like maybe the new way, obviously there's like trade-offs with everything, but it's like the new way is like just deploy it,
Yeah.
collect the telemetry, then feed that in to I don't know compare versions.
Yeah,
Like this version has different error distribution than like the old version.
Yeah. And or like database migrations, like that's been a big point because we have a SQLite like instance that ships with the app that, I've been making changes so quickly and I haven't been as diligent about tracking the migrations that I've definitely broken some.
I feel like the desktop app is just like a very different
Yeah.
series of challenges.
Yeah. It's definitely not as like the velocity on it, you run into a lot of these environment issues, and then, what if you're a version or two behind? You haven't opened it in 2 weeks. There's a lot of things you have to account for to make sure it still works without just like nuking it entirely.
But I guess that's like it would always. Yeah, I guess for you the problem is upgrades. It's not about because like once the app runs, it's like completely isolated, which is part of the value.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
like, it works. It's like oh shit, they got a new version now.
Yeah.
The index is busted because we introduced this new field. Now we have to treat it as optional.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a lot of like hardware optimization where we like spin up multiple workers to consume your queue to index all your stuff, but we have to make sure we don't like crash your computer. So we've got to like your computer is gonna have different performance specs than mine, and then especially when people try to run on like an Intel machine, there's no GPU available. So a lot of those edge cases, I've relied pretty heavily on AI to help me map out like what are the possible scenarios here and how can I at least get to like the common denominator of just this is going to work across most machines.
It's pretty good for things like that too, which is just like pay for like a premium model and be like look at the code base and I don't know highlight the 10 things I'm missing, or like hey I'm thinking about this problem like what are give me 5 scenarios, give me 4 like those like tend to be pretty good even first pass, but I think they give you enough to then apply human judgment and be like oh shit you like point out something interesting. Let's like dig in deeper here.
Where do you think, like both of us, like we're talking to businesses and exploring projects where they're trying to bring some of these tools in house and like really benefit from them outside of, like the Cursor, the Claudes, these things are like pretty well packaged for engineering teams to pick up and run with. But where do you think bigger organizations are moving on some of these?
A lot of
projects?
companies, like at least I've spoken to, do have enterprise like OpenAI licenses, right? So
Yeah.
they're giving ChatGPT to their team, and
Just
one,
the bot, the like interface.
just like the app.
Yeah.
And the app, like one thing is, I'm pretty sure like ChatGPT's or OpenAI is like doing more and more of these integrations. Like connect to Google Drive, connect to your like company's I don't know wiki system. Like I'm sure that's all like, in the works.
Your knowledge base.
And like some companies do have like enablement teams where they're using like ChatGPT to build on like MCP servers.
Yeah.
And, like in order to help. It's like we're gonna build a GPT for the sales team that's gonna be integrated with Salesforce plus this.
Yeah,
and they
Docs.
can integrate and they can talk to it through Slack.
Yeah.
Like I feel that's like typically how some of these like
Have you
less
tried
engineer.
Cursor Slack?
No,
They've got a Cursor.
I know for like the
integration.
background thing.
Yeah.
I'm less on Cursor because I've been using Clones.
Yeah.
CLI more.
I don't know. The background agents to me, I haven't necessarily felt all that compelled to. I don't know if I'm behind the curve or maybe it doesn't. The value isn't there yet. I guess I just don't trust it to run in the background because it already kind of runs in the background when it's thinking.
Yeah.
Whenever it's thinking, like I'm switching windows,
Yeah.
trying to probably chatting with Claude in the browser to do something else.
Yeah.
So. But I've seen more and more the like spin up multiple agents, like do multiple things at once.
I mean, that's kind of what the OpenAI like Codex thing did, and whatever. It's like at the end of the day, like then you're still the limiting factor because you have to code review everything, you have to like test everything. Then you might have conflicts. So I don't know, like similar to you, I'm like more sequential.
Mm-hmm.
But I suspect maybe it makes sense to do something like that for like, I don't know. If you have high confidence that's gonna do it's gonna one shot it
Yeah.
and you have like 10 of them, sure.
Mhm.
Go wild. It's probably not as useful if you're doing something gnarly where you do need to like supervise it anyway. And at
Yeah.
that point you might as well just be and then your approach, right? It's like you have it running in like CLI
Mhm.
and you I don't know, check it out every few minutes.
Yeah, yeah. Because I find that my context window can only go so far, right? Like my brain's context is, I can only, notoriously like multitasking is you get like poor return on your time because you're just like doing everything half-assed. So yeah, I don't necessarily feel that tempted. It's just because you have the power of spinning up multiple agents to do something, because then the nightmare of
Maybe we're
debugging
just
it-
behind.
It's true, yeah. Let's last few minutes. Let's talk about something that you just mentioned, MCP,
Yeah.
the model context protocol. Is that what is that?
Ooh, coming in hot. Define agents, define MCP. So it was introduced by Anthropic, and I think fundamentally it's a way for like these AIs, right, to be able to interact with APIs. So I guess like humans, if let's say you need to interact with like some API, what do? You look at the docs and it gives you endpoints, and some level like MCP is like a wrapper for that, right? So it's like these are the endpoints, this is what they take, and these are descriptions of them. The nice thing there is that because once again, like the agents understand language, like they can look at the description and be like, hey, I'm gonna, there's this I don't know tool called get weather.
Yeah.
And like let's behold, and then when you give it a request, it realizes, oh, they're asking for the weather. I'm gonna use this tool I have called weather.
Yeah.
So I think fundamentally it's just like a wrapper around like APIs that are designed for, I would say, like agentic like AI consumption. That's basically kind of it. Like I don't have like better than like the example would be maybe like GitHub. Like you could use a GitHub CLI, right, to open pull requests, look at issues. But you could also use MCP version of it, which sort of wraps the GitHub API into like GH underscore pull request, which has the expression which is open pull request.
And then your agent can use that to interact with it.
Yeah, like that talk I mentioned earlier, like Armin, like he actually says like MCP's not the right solution because if you have too many of them, the entire context is polluted and they take up too much space.
Yeah.
Like you're better off having these like very simple like CLI tools and having the agent call them directly.
Yeah. There's something about
I've used both. Like I kind of view them interchangeably in a way. Like they're just like different implementations of like the same, trying to solve the same problem.
Yeah. I think it's interesting the way that some of these companies are approaching the friction problem of like, how do I get into your workflow in like a really seamless way? And I think the CLI is a really clever way to do that. And I've seen some tutorials online of how people are using MCP, and you can spin up, like I think Docker now ships where you can spin up an MCP server, and then when you're using Claude, for example, then you can use that MCP server to now control a bunch of other local apps. So like Notion has one, Canva has an MCP server. It seems like everybody's rushing to get something so that now you're arming your agent with more and more tools.
Well, it's odd because like if you configure, like if you go to Cursor and configure MCP, and I did that. I added GitHub and like I created like I think like 26 tools.
Okay.
I added another one, which was like I don't even remember what it was. It had like 30 tools, and then Cursor gives you a warning. It's like we recommend 50 tools.
Okay.
You're like, dude, I configured like 2 MCP servers, and now you're like recommending
So
I feel like you run into issues like that.
like you're saying like it's the wrapper around all these tools, but each of these is jam packed with functionality because like
It's like every API endpoint suddenly like jump like
Right.
flash in there
And it's
with
like
description.
Yeah, and it's like we talked about at the beginning of the conversation, where all these little tools are very specific. It's like here's the grep tool, here's the pull request tool, and so to make something fully functional, you probably need at least 10, and then upwards of 50 or whatever. But in some of the examples that I've seen used where people are creating these like mini workflows locally on their machine using MCP, like I create, for example, try to create like a marketing agent, marketing agent that does a keyword search. It gets like the keyword volume and keyword difficulty from Perplexity, and then it writes those things into a spreadsheet. It takes that, generates ideas into another tab in the spreadsheet, and then it gives me like it generates like hooks for each one. So if it's a YouTube video, if it's a blog post, and when I built it at first, it seemed kind of underwhelming. You know, it's just like, okay, it gave me 10 things, and then now I still got to go out and do them, and I still don't feel like the written part, like if you ask ChatGPT or Claude to write a blog, it's still not very good.
It's very obviously AI.
Yeah.
Generic nonsense.
But you start to see the beginnings of like, okay, now if we were to hook in maybe VO3 and add a script step, and you start connecting it into like Slack is probably my command center. Like I use Slack for note taking. I use it for team communication, calls, all that stuff. And so if I had these things in Slack where like now I have AI teammates that it's like my marketing agent in the background has access to the keyword.
Are you able to connect agents to agents? Be like marketing agent talk to, I don't know, video agent.
Probably.
Wild.
I think you could, yeah. So you know, because I've made some examples of VO. I'll put some Cosmos ads at the end of this video. If you've got some, we'll put some in here. But there's that, to me, feels like we've crossed into a really kind of like a big breakthrough in terms of the costs of producing your marketing material.
I heard that like VO is like 75 cents a second.
Really?
Yeah, if you were like using it via API. I don't know if it's true.
The new one, VO3,
Yeah, VO3.
with audio. Yeah, I mean, but
I also pay $20 a month for Gemini.
do you?
Yeah, so I can generate 3 a day if you need me.
Yeah. I think I could generate. Did you see that they released it in Google Docs?
No.
You can in Google. It's a Google Docs UI with just like a video prompt in it.
It's wild.
So it is kind of funny how Google just does like the most Google thing, which is like here it's like this really powerful technology. Use it to make more Google Docs stuff.
Yeah.
But the quality of it is, you know, aside from, I found that with humans, it's not as great. Like sometimes like the lip syncing is not totally there, or like just them walking around isn't. But for more abstract stuff, like if you like I created an example of a wall of media that like kind of collapses or shatters and then reveals like Cosmos in the back. And that, it was like really, really good.
How long did it take you though? Like how many iterations before you got it right?
2.
So that's pretty good.
Yeah, that was solid. But then I tried to do one where I was trying to do people talking about Cosmos, and that I couldn't get right. Like I gave up after like 4 tries. So that's why I was like, yeah, once you start adding people, you start noticing, right?
Were you using
You
the
got,
Google Docs version?
Yeah,
of
in the Google Docs, because that's how they gave me the free one.
Yeah.
So that's why I think, to what you were saying earlier, it does feel like we're in this age of just like they're spending so much money, and they being, you know, like the big AI companies or the VC funded companies, they're investing so much money in getting you hooked onto it that, yeah, it's not for $20 a month.
To your point, there's like such low switching costs.
Yeah. So they're like, will it all be commoditized?
Yeah.
You know, and then especially with how much money they're throwing at stealing talent from each other.
Yeah, it's wild.
It's how do we get in on that? How do we
More agents.
OpenAI, if you're listening, or Anthropic, asking price is $150 million each, but we'll give you a discount if you take both of us.
Oh, that's true. Bulk purchase discount.
Yeah. Well, Dan, this has been really
it was awesome.
interesting. Thanks for coming by. Let's do it again soon.
Yeah, we'll
And,
do it a month from now. It'll look completely different.
Yeah, where can people find you?
Do Dan at twingdata.com. TWINGDATA. Also on Twitter and everywhere. LinkedIn, whatever. Dan Golden.
Yeah, and that's twingdata.com.
Twing. Hard G.
Twingdata.com.
How about you?
Cool. Check me out at mecosmos.com, and you can reach out to me, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, or Brian at mecosmos.com.